I'm sure some folks will still participate in politics, hoping they can find a benevolent ruler to at least mitigate some of the infringements in place now. But guys, that's a road to nowhere. It's a road to beatdowns on the street, extortion, and democide, with an even greater loss of freedom year after year, election after election. And it's one of the most vicious falsehoods perpetuated throughout the ages. The naive notion that politics can set you free. And that's why I've been so harsh on the anti-libertarian Libertarian Party, because, as I've said before, the people are sick of politics, the left-right paradigm, so what do? They give them more politics. It's the most insincere and ingenuine thing you can do to a fellow human being. It really is dangerous to be an anarchist, and it will only get, as per kind of the stages of Agoras and that Conking kind of laid out, it's going to get worse, and then it's going to get better, but, when's it going to start getting better?
You're listening to Liberty Under Attack Radio, and now your host, Shane.
Away from Coercion and Into the Free Digital Economy. Essays by James Farber. Editor's note. The following are two essays from Paul Rosenberg's book titled Lodging of Wayfaring Men, which I highly recommend. Herein, James Farber, one of the main characters, published an opinion piece in the New York Times discussing the problem of coercion, the negative impact it has on society, the detrimental effect it has on human creativity and innovation, and a request to folks in the state of servile society. We don't want to change your systems. We just want to be left alone. The time for the free digital economy is now. James Farber's first essay. Quote, "It began with Arab traders and the merchants of Venice. They really didn't know what they were building or how it would work. They merely struggled for the betterment of themselves and their families. It began to break out when the deep superstition of the Middle Ages cracked open under the strain of new philosophies and religious ideas. It found room to grow wherever new and wild vistas were found. It found fresh growth with each discovery of far-off new lands. It found a home everywhere the old order was broken up and fresh starts were being made. It took a firm root in America and flourished there for over 100 years. Never again, where history is recorded, will there be any question as to whether or not it works. It is the great discovery of the modern era, the positive sum game. It is the liberation of human energy to do its appropriate job. It is the operation of creation using the only counter-entropic force we have, free human energy. You can see it work everywhere from the research lab to the front office, to the construction site. It is what drives the entrepreneur to develop and produce a new product or service, and it is what gives the construction worker pride when his skill overcomes a difficult problem, making a way for his blueprints to become a functional structure. Why is the construction worker proud, and why does the entrepreneur exult? Because they have done the one thing that all humans have the impulse to do, to create something good that would not have been otherwise. Human energy is the great creative force in the world. Without it, things tend to entropy. As the second law of thermodynamics states, closed systems tend to entropy. Without active and creative human energy, everything goes back to an animal level of existence. This human energy does not function by obedience and compulsion. It cannot, no matter how many rulers wish it were otherwise. Look at the command economies of the dead socialist world. Within several decades, their occupants were reduced to an animal existence. Look at the millennia, when constrained people lived at the pleasure of their kings, seeking permissions from their rulers to live and work. They continually starved and died. It was only when a few freelance merchants began living according to their own minds and breaking away from the permissions of their rulers that things began to change. When human energy is free to move, creativity goes wild, as do motivation, happiness, and the accumulation of wealth. When it is restrained, the descent to animal existence takes over again. The discovery of this fact is what differentiates us from the Middle Ages and not much else. Do you think the people who lived in those dark times were inherently less intelligent than we are? They were not. You and I are their direct descendants, not many generations removed. We are essentially the same. The term positive sum game signifies that this system creates more than the sum of its parts. The only real magic, human energy, creates more than it started with. Take some raw materials that are of themselves or of little worth, and when you add human creativity, you can create vehicles, computers, and spaceships. The materials themselves have been around since the creation of the Earth. If they could have turned into something great of themselves, they would have done it a long time ago. But they cannot. It is only when humans manipulate them according to their own ideas that they gain any value. Thus, $5 worth of materials becomes a product worth thousands of dollars. They who do not play the positive-sum game instinctively fall back into being motivated by envy. Ultimately, they find reasons to feel that there are only so many pieces of the pie. This is the seed of destruction. The next thing they say is, if you have a bigger piece of the pie, then someone else has to have less. That is a zero-sum game. The idea that nothing is really created, just moved from one hand to another. Not only is it false, but it is also the credo of every envious looter who speaks of fairness and equal distribution of wealth, but who secretly hopes to get a share of wealth held by others. The real controversy of our time is this. Is human energy allowed to work in the world, or will it be tied down? The miserable experiment of communism has taught the world's rulers that the positive-sum game is necessary. So, their plan now is to allow human energy to work, but to siphon off as much wealth as possible without killing it altogether. We productive people are carrying the governments of the world upon our backs. Are they worth half of our efforts? Half of our lives? They take half of our earnings away from us continually by a vast web of taxes, fees, and regulations. For what benefit? To help the poor, they say, and clamorously infer that if you disagree, you are a heartless and dangerous person, and further that all will despise you. But if our money is forcibly taken from us, is not the state robbing us? Any dictionary will tell you that this is so, but it is considered poor form to say so, even to consider it. And are the poor better off? Certainly, some of our money goes to the poor, although most is eaten up in the bureaucracy. This feeds their bellies insufficiently while at the same time locking them to a life of dependence that wages an unending war upon their souls. Is that a good thing? Are the poor better off for this robbing of producers and living in a state of dependency? Many of you will gasp and reel in shock that I would challenge the respectability and honor of your tradition, and you fear to let yourselves consider my case. You have come up against someone who does not share in your conspiracy of compliance. You must either turn away from these subjects or face the prospect of becoming a radical and of people saying bad things about you. Are you angry? If so, it is not because I am wrong. If that were the case, you would simply walk away. You are angry because I am ill-mannered enough to bring up subjects that you wish to avoid. My ideas bother you. When they come up, you divert your mind to pat phrases like, "This is the price we pay for our society." You dodge reason and shun your thoughts away in order to keep your mental comfort level. You do not face these ideas head-on because you are afraid of them. You are afraid that you might have to agree with them, and then you would have to face the choice either to be a hero or to be a coward. I stood one evening in IBM Plaza in Chicago looking over the riverfront skyline as the sun sank in the southwest and realized that the towering monuments to human effort in front of me were the result of the positive-sum game run only at half speed. Chicago was wild and open from the 1830s through the 1890s. Then, slowly, the curbs and limits were imposed by a do-gooder government and collectivist types. These inevitably slowed the workings of a city that had been, as one writer said, geared for giants. But the restraints were not enough to stop the positive-sum game, only enough to slow it down. The Chicago skyline I watched was the result of the positive-sum game being played at half speed, yet its results were awesome. I thought about what might have been if it were allowed to operate unfettered, and then I thought of the greatest example of the positive-sum game during my lifetime, Hong Kong. It went from rice fields to the grandest city of the East in one generation, an explosion of unrestrained human energy. What glorious accomplishments aborted and stillborn. And now our recent explosion of technology has become the target of bureaucrats worldwide. Where will we go from here? Will the positive-sum game once again be strangled, or will it migrate to open and new lands? But moving to a new land will be a problem, won't it? There is no land on this planet that is not claimed by some gang of rulers. So, until cheap spaceflight is achieved, there is only one new country to be found: cyberspace. So escape there we shall, and there we will, and must for our own sake and for the sake of our descendants, establish the positive-sum game without restriction. Toward that end, we have built a private free market. We used our own money to do it, and we've broken no laws that we are aware of, save laws that outlaw privacy. Now the rulers are trying to stop us. Why? We want to run an experiment and see if freedom really is better than servitude. Why won't they let us try? Are they interested in the betterment of mankind, or are they really interested in monopoly powers? All we want is to be left alone and try freedom. Why is that threatening? And why do they wish to imprison us? James Farber, end quote. James Farber's second essay, quote, "History books tell the stories of rulers. Some are kings, some emperors, some presidents or prime ministers, and some potentates of a more exotic name. A few of them were more or less benevolent, and others were tyrants. Most were in between. But they all held one thing in common. They maintained a monopoly on the use of force in their territories. They maintained the right to use coercion and to prevent all others from doing so. Stripped of romantic rhetoric and patriotic emotion, the essence of rulership is the ability to maintain a monopoly of force. Argue if you like, but you'll be arguing with a dictionary. Every reform of government and rulership to date has kept the central mechanism of coercion in place. Did some governmental reforms lead to improvements? Certainly. They made things considerably less bad. But they left centralized coercion in place. And for every good leader that has come along, such as a Washington or a Churchill, we've had several times as many Stalins or Maos. I have friends who study such things, and they assure me that roughly 2% of all people are would-be dictators. If they had the opportunity to oppress the world, they would. Another 12% or so would be facilitators. That is, when one of the 2%ers comes to power, they are glad to fill a slot and vigorously exercise power over others. Like it or not, these people are out there, and they are drawn to the levers of power. And once every so often, they have their turns. When they do, innocent people die in large numbers. Over 100 million died in the past century. Try to comprehend that. 100 times 1,000 times 1,000 people. Boys, girls, men, women, teenagers, short, tall, strong, weak, dark-skinned, and light-skinned. All of them dead because twisted people were able to take hold of centralized force. If you have wondered why some of us are so determined to keep governments out of cyberspace, please understand that this is why. We've had enough of centralized force. We're removing the whole mechanism. We think it was a mistake from the beginning. We don't want there to be anything for the 2% to grab. If you want coercive rulership, keep it. We won't try to take it away from you. But we have chosen to opt out. Don't try to rein us back in. We won't try to make you live our way, and you don't try to make us live your way. We are not your property. Our arrangement has no central mechanism of coercion, and it has been working quite well for a couple of years now. We like it. This new arrangement has, however, surprised us in several ways. One of the things we discovered was that once you remove the mechanisms of coercion, you remove something else. Politics. Politics is the art and science of managing centralized coercion. This is the reason political debates are so infuriating. The final decision leads to unopposable force. Once the political process is completed, you have the choice either to obey or to be punished. Coercion is the sine qua non of politics, the thing without which politics would not be politics. Indeed, if you remove coercion, politics becomes something else. Economics. Things work by economic means here. If you don't like the way a market operates, just move to a different one. Or if no one does it the way you think is right, start your own. There are no protected services here, nothing mandatory. You may opt out of anything you don't like, or offer any service you like. We couldn't stop you if you wanted to start a communist collective. The only limitation would be that you cannot force anyone to join or remain part of your collective. We have no mechanism for that. The entire system is built around the idea that persuading people to trade with you is moral, and that forcing them is not. We think our ideas are right, but we will not impose them on you. You can hold whatever ideas you like, just don't impose them on us. All this being said, what really concerns your rulers, and what is driving them to demonize us, is that people are leaving their systems and joining ours. Your children are joining the free digital economy in huge numbers. No, the young people are not joining us for historical and philosophical reasons. Those things are mostly for us older people. Young people, as always, are looking for adventure and opportunity. In your regulated world, very few people ever get much real adventure or overwhelming success. They read about such things in novels and celebrity tabloids. They see them in movies, but very few of them will actually experience such things. Our world, on the other hand, has adventure and opportunity in wholesale quantities. Your children may have to work hard to get it, but a big life is waiting for them if they wish to earn it. In our realm, intelligence, daring, and perseverance are rewarded far more directly than in your regulated world. Here you can be a complete unknown, with no connections and no wealth. But if you can learn to provide excellent ideas or services, you can get rich. No one here knows or cares about the color of your skin or your sex or who you sleep with or anything of the sort. If you can produce, you're a player. Want to go from rags to riches? Pick a valuable skill in our world, throw yourself into it with all your might, excel at it, and start selling it. Time and effort are all you need. You don't need friends in the right places, only value to offer. And there's more. The truth is that the best rewards come to those who are first at something new. Jobs and Wozniak were the first to produce a good personal computer, but other people would have done the same thing within a year or two. They got to do all the cool stuff only because they were first. You can say the same thing for every other discovery or invention. Human knowledge is built piece upon piece, and new discoveries follow more or less in that sequence. If you want to do the really fun things, you have to get out to the front of the line. The stream of human knowledge is now firmly rooted in our world. The frontier of Alvin Toffler's third wave is in cyberspace, and that's where the front of the line can be found. Now let me tell you about the future of the third wave. The central idea of your old world is coercive authority. This is embodied not only in rulership but in schools, in families, and religions, and in most every area of life. We are all born into a world that told us, do what you were told or we'll hurt you. Our parents told us that, our teachers imposed it on us, our gods are envisioned this way, and certainly the rulers of the earth operate this way. From birth to death continually, it confronts you all. Having lived with these ideas for 100 generations, humanity is used to this and can survive it moderately well, but it is far from ideal. From birth on, you are trained to sit, obey, or else, to worry that you might do something wrong without realizing. It puts you in a sort of perpetual cringe, unconsciously cowering in expectation of the next blow. Being used to it is no reason to think that it isn't damaging. We have eliminated this. It has no root here, no mechanism. This is having an effect on the world already, although it certainly has a long way to go. But it is here, and it is not fading away. It may be a generation or two before we begin to see how the coercion-free mind works, longer before it becomes dominant. Nonetheless, the seedlings have been planted, and they are thriving. We certainly didn't start this. Its roots trace back to every free thinker, to every rebel for truth, to the true heroes who in 1,000 different areas of life had the courage to be right, even in the face of opposition. We are simply carrying on their work at the moment when it threatens to reach critical mass. If we were simply one more reform movement, we would seek to conquer your system and run it our way. That, however, is not what we are. We do not accept coercion as moral. We do not wish to coerce anyone, and we will not submit to being coerced. We do not want to run your system. If all of this seems threatening to you, I'm sorry, I know how that can feel. We are not your enemies. We are your friends, and we are your future. We will not harm you. We do not want to take governments away from you. We do not want to control your governments. We are not asking you to change your lives. We are only withdrawing from your game. Go your own way in peace. We wish you well. We still love you. We still care about you. We'll still spend time with you, and in the right situation, we will defend you. But we will not remain part of your coercive systems. We are pleased to share this planet with you, but we do not wish to share your social structures. We want to do a new thing, a better thing. If you wish the best for your children, encourage them to step into the new world, a world where they can own their own lives and enjoy the fruits of their own labor. A perfect world? No. But a much better world than one with centralized coercion and obedience to authority as its main pillars. We do wish you well, James Farber. End quote. Now, I thought that would be a good way to introduce this podcast before I start my discussion with Paul Rosenberg. That gives you an idea. I mean, Paul wrote that. That gives you an idea of a little bit of insight into his mind, as well as, I guess, a little insight into the book as well, The Free Digital Economy. Again, please get the book, A Lodging of Wayfaring Men. It's free at anarplex.net, and it'll be in the show notes of this podcast. Welcome to Liberty Under Attack Radio, your home for anarchism in action. I'm your host, Shane, coming to you from the communist state of Illinois. This podcast, everything found on the website, unless otherwise noted, is covered by BIPCOT's no government license. This allows reuse and modification to anyone except for governments and the bludgies thereof. You can learn more at bipcot.org. So I thought Kyle Reardon and I would get together this week to record the next episode of our Building the Second Realm series, as well as another season 3 edition of the Vonu podcast. But that hasn't happened, unfortunately. Now we're falling behind a little bit again, it seems, and it is out of my hands, so I sincerely apologize. But regardless, I have an extremely special guest joining me this evening on both this podcast and TVP. I've mentioned a book titled A Lodging of Wayfaring Men many, many times in the past month. Hopefully enough to get you to take some time to read the damn book already. So if you took my advice, you're going to be glad you did. Today I'm joined by Paul Rosenberg, a longtime crypto-anarchist and author of the aforementioned book. He also co-wrote a book called The New Age of Intelligence with Jonathan Logan, both of which I highly recommend. I'll have him on today for about an hour to cover half of the things I wish to talk with him about, and sometime in the very near future, I'll bring him on again to cover the rest. So without further ado, Mr. Rosenberg, welcome to Liberty Under Attack Radio, sir. How are you doing on this fine Wednesday evening?
I'm doing well, and thanks for having me.
Hey, not a problem. So, before I interview a new guest, I always go back and look at, other podcasts they've been on. So I found you on Jake DeSilsa's podcast, a 2-part episode, back in, I think, 2012. And then I found you on Anarchast I think like 2012 and 2013 you were on there a couple times. So, I mean, have you done a lot more podcast interviews than that, or have I just have I not found them yet?
Oh yeah, there are more. I do podcasts. I do radio sometimes. There are also YouTubes out there somewhere of me speaking at conferences, things like that.
Oh right, I did watch that. Yeah, I watched one of your. I can't remember what the presentation was called, but your daughter, introduced you.
Oh right.
Yeah, I don't remember what it was called, but
It
yeah, that
was
was
from the Chicago Bitcoin meetup. It was on cypherpunks and Bitcoin.
Right. Yeah, that's what it was. Yeah, that was a really fun presentation to watch. Yeah. So I guess in this episode, Paul, I'd like to discuss the crypto-anarchism aspects of lodging and wayfaring men, and obviously get your background and such for the listeners who may not be aware. But when we chat next time, I'd really like to dig into your views on spirituality in the Bible, as well as your take on sexuality and modern marriage. Both subjects really discussed in this podcast, but they were mentioned and discussed at quite a length in your book, A Lodging of Wayfaring Men, and I've never really seen a take like yours before. So we'll definitely dig into that, in the second episode. So I suppose we'll start here. I guess tell the listeners a little bit about yourself. How long have you been involved in the crypto-anarchist community, and how did you get involved?
Oh my. Okay. I'll begin with I was in the electrical business for many years. I wrote the magazines for electrical contractors and electricians, sometimes for engineers. I wrote a lot of magazine articles, and I quickly got into fiber optics in the early 1990s because it was very interesting and it was the new area. I mean, it was brand new at that time. We literally made it up as we went, which was a gas. There was nobody telling us what we had to do. I actually wrote the very first standard for the installation of optical fibers in buildings.
Wow.
Because there was no one else to do it. And so we had a gas with that. And I was always interested in computers and computer sorts of things. I was on bulletin board systems, and then came the internet. And so I was involved with all sorts of things like that. And somehow, by the middle 1990s, I was in the general orbit of the cypherpunk world. And just one thing led to another, and I got involved with various cypherpunk projects and so on. So I've just been going in it for a long time.
Awesome. That's great to hear. And I thought this was a mistake. I thought there was a second Paul Rosenberg out there, because I searched Amazon to see if you've written anything else. And it was, a bunch of, I guess a bunch of guides. And I was like, hey, there must be a couple Paul Rosenbergs, but I guess not. And it's actually kind of interesting. I just got a job as an industrial electrician's apprentice, probably 4 months ago. So that's, I guess that kind of overlaps very, very nicely here. So I guess tell us a bit about your site, Crypto Hippie.
Oh, well, Crypto Hippie is a professional privacy service. It's a VPN, but it's a professional level VPN. It's not really a hobbyist thing, or, you get your VPN for $2 a month that they're all going for now. This is a serious VPN. And I'll tell you what, it actually came out of Lodging of Wayfaring Men. Because after that book was published, it was anonymous at first. It was published first in late 2002, and I was hanging out on a particular encrypted anonymous chat hangout at the time, and people were talking about the book, which was very odd because I couldn't admit authorship. Yeah, very strange little position to find yourself in.
It's like, hey, what do you think about this book?
I think it's great. Am I being a shill? But one of the gentlemen there, we talked a lot, and we had a lot in common, and we had mutual feelings about things. And he's a very bright guy, and after a while, he says to me one day on a private channel, he says, "You're the guy." And I said, "What do you mean?" He says, "You wrote that book." And I said, well, what makes you think so? And he had a very good linguistic sort of analysis of why it was me. And I trusted him. So I said, yeah, it was. And he said, wow. We need to talk. And
yes.
I said, well, where are you? And he was in Germany, and I happened to be in Amsterdam at the time, and it was very cinematic. We met at the cathedral in Cologne on a cold February morning, wearing trench coats, and but it really happened that way. And we met and we drove around for 5 days and talked about everything under the sun. And then the last day, he said, "You know what? Meet me at the hotel bar once we get in." So I said, "Sure." And we sat at the bar, and he quickly became very serious. And he said, "Look," and this is, by the way, 2005. And he says, "Freedom has to exist somewhere." And I said, yes. And he said, "Right now, the internet is a great place for it, but it's being overrun with surveillance and all kinds of stuff, and we can't let it be lost." And I said, "I entirely agree." And he said, "I know how to do that." And I said, I know you do, because he's very, very good at these things. And I said, "I believe you do." And he says, "I can't do it myself. I want you to do it with me." Well, what do you say? You have to say yes.
Right.
So I did, and that's really where Crypto Hippie began. It took us a couple of years to build our network. It required a special sort of corporate setup. It required servers in lots of different countries. So it took us a few years to get everything really set up. And I think we started taking customers in 2007 or 2008. And it's been a lot of fun. I mean, it's a nice company. We make money out of it, but that's really not why we did it. We did it because it mattered. I had other things to do, so did he, and so did some of the other people in the company, but we decided it really needed to be done. No one was really doing it very well, and it was too important to let go. So that's what Crypto Hippie, how it began.
Awesome. That's very interesting. In Germany, I'm not surprised by that fact. I mentioned in pre-show a website called Interplex.net, which I came across a few months ago. Read all of the literature on there. That's actually where I found your book linked the first time, and actually the only time. And it seems like a lot of those folks may be from Germany. And the book hashtag Agora is set in Germany. So I have a feeling there's a pretty good crypto-anarchist community in that locale.
Oh, there is, and it's really all throughout Eastern Europe. You find a lot of people. There's a conference I try to go to every year in Prague. It's called the Hackers Congress at Parallel Polis, and wow, what a place to go! And you got to remember, the people from Eastern Europe, they not that long ago emerged from Soviet domination. So they have kind of a feeling in their bones of that surveillance and all this stuff is really a bad thing. They have even the young ones, they have stories from their parents and grandparents that are very real to them. And they're serious about this stuff. And there's a lot of good things happening in Eastern Europe.
That's so great to hear. So I guess one question, because I did recently, something I've been meaning to do for a while, haven't really gotten around to it. I have other means for this, but I decided that I would subscribe to a VPN service. Now I went with private internet access to kind of test one out. Honestly, was the purpose, and I used a gift card I got for Christmas to pay for the service. So,
Right.
I mean, so I guess something that came up when you were discussing your Crypto Hippie VPN service. I mean, what's the difference between private internet access and what you guys offer?
Well, I don't know that one particular. There's just so many now that I can't keep up. But I'll give you
generally speaking, yeah.
Yeah, the usual difference is most VPNs are what we call a single hop proxy. Very cool tech in the 90s, not so cool anymore. It's just one hop. In other words, you connect to them, and then from there, they send you out into wherever you're to the internet from there. Nothing wrong with it. It's fine. Usually their front end connection is a fairly decent connection. But for sort of surveillance purposes, it's really a slight bump in the road, if anything. What you need to do is to have multiple hops, 2 hops, 3 hops, so that we've all seen the silly spy movies where there's a guy tracking the signal. He's in Aruba, Jim. No, he's in Cancun. No, he's in Madrid. that's what you need to do. And so Crypto Hippie does that with 2 or 3 hops. Another important thing is you should have your own key infrastructure. In the Snowden documents, we found out that the NSA and their partners have pretty much infiltrated the key certificate agencies and got them to either weaken their hashes or to give away secrets to them. And they bragged that they had, this was 2010 maybe, that they already had 30 VPNs and they were going for 300. And the way they did it was to subvert, not to really subvert, you can't beat encryption. It just isn't done, not quality, well implemented encryption, but you can trash the certificates. These guys, they go into companies and they sit down and they play good cop, bad cop and scare them, and they get people to go along with them. After all, you don't want bad guys to blow up a bridge. So you have to run your own key infrastructure these days if you want to be a serious VPN. And I really don't know anybody but us who does it. There may be other people I just don't know, but I'm not aware of anyone but us who actually does that. Another thing is you don't want to have a single point of failure. Right. If somebody comes in and takes over your office, do they get everything that there is? Do they know everything about everybody? Well, we decided to not do that from the beginning. So Crypto Hippie is actually not one company. It's actually several. There's a network company, there's a sales company, and they're completely separate with non-identical ownership. And so we do all kinds of things like that that make a real major difference. Like I say, there's nothing particularly bad about a single hop VPN. But the silly things are, they're going to give them away. Here, we'll give you a free VPN. Well, nothing's free. And if they're giving you a free VPN, then they're selling your information to other people, which is kind of...
And it's slow as hell. I tried one of those 3 years back or something, and it was super, super slow. So I stopped using it really quickly. Well, I guess you're going to have another customer here in the next week or so. I guess private internet access may not be. I mean, it was just so easy. I use it on my phone all the time. When I'm not recording podcasts, I just set it up. But you can't really notice it's there, and you can choose where you connect to. So I connect to Australia most of the time. So I mean, it's convenient, and I guess it's another layer of protection, even though it may not be great. So speaking of encryption, I guess I just real briefly here. So PGP, pretty good privacy. Is it still super secure? Pretty impossible to crack.
Yeah, pretty much. If you implement it properly, PGP or the open source version that pretty much everyone is using now, called GPG or GNU PG. Right. They're fine. The difference in difficulty between encrypting and decrypting is something like 2 to the 100th power. So, encryption properly implemented isn't going to be broken anytime soon. And people say, wait, but there's going to be quantum encryption. It's going to change everything. There's already quantum secure encryption that's been developed, and people are using it already. We are using it or are about to be using it in some parts of our network. It's not the nightmare that people make it out to be, but it will be to people who don't stay current and people who don't update their systems and so on. Then if they get quantum encryption, which is still not certain, but if that happens, then a lot of things will be opened up to whoever wants to look, but not people who take it seriously.
Right. All right. Very good. Very good. And yeah, that is something that I've I guess some sort of a reason or an excuse not to use PGP or encryption is, come on, the NSA can break that. Well, now guys, now you know that if it's implemented properly, then yeah, it is. You're making it a major pain in their ass if they ever want to look through your stuff, and plus they probably can't even if they want to, according to Paul here. So I guess let's go ahead and move forward here. I want to thank you sincerely for taking the time to write A Lodging of Wayfaring. Man, the book was absolutely incredible. The characters had so much depth, and the crypto-anarchist themes throughout were honestly amazing. I was also quite surprised about your discussions on spirituality and the Bible, sexuality and marriage, as well as your views on the overall human experience. I was quite pleased to see kind of that analysis in your book. And I mean, it was pretty really incredible, man. So I guess just some background, and I thought this was kind of funny, but I first came across this book on a website called anarplex.net, and it was actually it was written by an anonymous author. Come to find out a week or so later after a Google search, you were actually the author, and I first heard of you, via Ben Stone's books, Editions, Aversion, and Sabotage. So I said, aha, I can reach out to Ben and see if he can put me in contact with Paul. So here we are. So I guess just the long story short, thank you so much for taking the time to write this book.
Oh, you're so welcome. Thank you so much for saying so.
Not a problem. So I guess tell us a bit about it. What made you write it? Why did you originally publish it anonymously? And what caused you to put your name to it later on?
Okay. Well, I was already an author. I had written, like you saw, a lot of construction and engineering sorts of books. But I had all these ideas in me. I had been reading history books and philosophy and all sorts of things forever. And I just had some point where it just was in me and it was going to have to come out somehow or another. And so I just began. I had never written any fiction before, but I just began to do it. And I began making my notes and planning the story and so on. This would be sometime in the middle 1990s, maybe 97, somewhere like that. And of course, I was involved with lots of cypherpunk sort of things, crypto-anarchist sort of projects. So it was, very up close and personal to me. So I know all of the issues involved. People see things in the movies. Oh, that's really interesting. That's kind of cool. But when it's you who's in that position, when it's your butt's on the line, then it's a very different set of feelings. And I hope I was able to incorporate those in the book because I was actually living those things at the time, which made, I think it helped the book a lot. So I finished it probably I worked, in the afternoons and the evenings whenever I had time, whenever, it hit me that I needed to write more. I had a great idea. And I just worked on it over a period of years. And in about 2001, I really had a good draft done. And I sent it anonymously to Andrea Rich of Laissez-Faire Books, who didn't know me from Adam and was so nice and so gracious to me, and read it for me and sent it back with comments that made the book better. I really owe her great thanks. And so I incorporated the things that she suggested and went through it again and again and again. And in 2002, I was able to publish it. It actually was very, very anonymous. It was mailed in a plain brown wrapper from Switzerland. And done through a very, very anonymous system that we had, an economic system that we had at that time. And the reason I did it anonymously was it was to keep my life from getting complicated and the life of my family from getting complicated. This was, remember, 9/11 happened as I was doing my final editing, and 3 weeks later, that awful Patriot Act came in. And I'm thinking, gee, this is a pretty radical book. I mean, obviously, I don't endorse violence or anything that you or I would actually say is bad. But, the guys in the three-letter agencies in D.C. may find some reason to think I'm a monster. And so I said, I don't want my family to have to deal with that if that happens. I don't think the odds are very high, but there are some. And I thought, I don't want them to have to deal with that. And I think I'm just going to publish it anonymously. And so I did. And it went like that for several years. And then by 2007, I was really ready to promote it better and to do other things. And it looked like the darkest scenarios weren't going to come to pass. So I said, all right, I'm just going to put my name on it and go from here, and I'll play that role. And so I did.
Awesome, very good. Yeah, I can certainly understand your apprehension of putting your name to that. Obviously, yeah, as you said, the risks were probably pretty low, but at the same time, I mean, you really can't put anything past the state. The scenario that you kind of laid out there, in the book, and how much damage that did to the state. I mean, that's if that were to happen today. It would be it would be a mess. They might not like you implanting those ideas into people's heads. Not that the people reading that book already don't have those ideas anyways. But I guess just to speak a little more to the book, I was there's a book on Anarplex called #Agora, which is incredible, much shorter read, much I guess. I mean, you're following two main characters throughout the entire story, but with yours, as I said, there's so much depth to your characters, and you're following like 3 or 4 different storylines throughout. I mean, you start out with George Demetrios, who was the scientist, who was his research is getting shut down by intelligentsia, by the academia, and he had some really revolutionary research that he was doing, and he decided that he was going to steal all of his equipment and move on to do the research independently. You had I think it was Michael, maybe Michael, or I don't remember. There's a lot of characters, but the guy who was the proxy merchant, essentially, the one that would help people get new identities. I guess.
Yes.
So
my British character.
Yeah. Right. So there was that. And then there was just I'm a big fan of security culture. So just seeing the ways that you implement that into your book. I mean, the developers, programmers, and maintainers of the free digital economy. As I said, they had proxy merchants. I mean, the free souls. They went through, was it James Farber, who was and also Philip too, for their financiers. And they kind of they were above board as far as the state could see. They were just they're just investors following the letter of the law and all that, and they helped keep the Free Souls operation going while they developed the free digital economy. There was what else was there? The individuals taking care of the free digital economy's data centers when they started to. When the FBI started to figure out and get worried about them, there were foreigners there that had plausible deniability. They didn't really know what was going on. So they were able to, when these people would get arrested, they're able to get them off pretty quickly. That was a really interesting way that you put that in there. And then also just the terrific attorney on retainer to handle all of these things. Right. I mean, it was just really incredible to see how this, I guess, this spontaneous organization, at least to some extent, was able to keep themselves safe while doing this very contentious thing in the eyes of the state.
Yeah, I thought that was a really important part, because in real life you need to do things like that just for practical reasons. You want to keep yourselves safe while doing things that matter, and that's really a necessary part. And I thought it was important to really, and plus it made the story much more interesting rather than some character who just strides through on a white horse and makes everything happen.
Right, yeah, and I think like there have been deep web marketplaces like Silk Road, and at least with the couple the couple that I've watched, or I guess I've looked into why these people got arrested. It was basically just bad security culture. They screwed up. They made a mistake, and that's what got them caught. So I think for people pursuing those, I guess those definitely illegal or illicit deep web marketplaces. For folks who, hopefully in the very near future will implement the assassination politics that, I can't think of his name now. Whoever, Jim Bell. Thank you. When people decide to actually put that into action, they would behoove them to read your book and, just see how all of these things came together, because obviously we don't want to see our people get tossed in cages. Definitely don't.
Right. But I will disagree with you on one thing. I don't think assassination politics is a good idea.
Really?
I think it's a very bad idea. I don't know that it would actually work, for one thing. For another, it would turn, your average neighbors against people like us, because it would scare them. And plus the big thing is, I don't want our guys to be assassins. Killing people is really, really, really bad for you. Forget about the guy who dies. For you, it's a really bad, damaging thing to do. Most people never get over it for life. So I really very much think that's a bad idea.
Fair enough, fair enough. And yeah, I like to get other viewpoints on it. I definitely do. We've talked about it on this podcast before, and I've liked the idea. Maybe I need to rethink that. I think you bring up some good points there. So I guess jumping forward again, have you ever heard of the concept of the second realm or second realm?
Oh, sure.
Yeah, awesome.
Oh, yeah.
Awesome.
I've read the book. It's terrific.
Okay, great. That's really really awesome. So obviously there is some second realm stuff in your book, A Lodging of Wayfaring Men. The second realm folks talk about proxy merchants. To people that would go from realm to realm, people that were highly specialized in their roles, and you definitely incorporated those into your book. And that was actually before that book was written, I'm pretty sure. So I guess how long have you been familiar with the concept of second realms? And we'll go with that.
Oh my, I don't know when the Second Realm book was written. I want to guess 2012, 2013. I'm not sure. Somewhere in that area. And I had discussions with people about that for, quite some years before then.
Okay. Very good, very good. And then also another concept of the second realm, which they took from Hakeem Bey, was temporary autonomous zones.
Oh yeah,
those were definitely incorporated into your book. So I guess overall, as far as the strategy for second realms and for the listeners' benefit, we haven't gotten to this part in the Building the Second Realm series, but second realms can be either digital or physical. Maybe we've talked about that. I'm not sure. I guess what are your thoughts on second realms?
Oh, I think they're necessary. Right now, we're living in a difficult condition. Where we have these dominating groups that take everybody's money by force and lock people in cages from time to time if they don't do what they like. The real problem is that our neighbors and most people, they don't really think it's the greatest idea, but that's all they know and it's all they've got, and they give it support. When they're afraid, they run to it because it's big. So there are people, that's our real problems, that people support it. But it's necessary in the current situation to have different ways to get away and get around and to slow them down. We really don't do anything that anybody should really complain about. We don't hurt anybody. We're nice to our neighbors, and we're kind to animals and all of those things. We're not bad people, but at times we do need places that we can meet and we can go to that may be some of the enforcement class won't like, and we need strategies to deal with it. So I think Second Realm is really important for everybody to understand. Whether you have to actually implement it or not is another question, but it's very important that you know it and you're able to implement it if you need to.
Right. And I guess one thing they discuss pretty heavily in Second Realm book on strategy is culture, and this is something that I kind of overlooked for I guess maybe the first couple years, when I found anarchism, and I think it's something other than I guess more of the folks on the right. They talk about culture all the damn time, but it's not the culture that the Second Realm folks talk about. But it's not just the state. Obviously, the state is this horrible, violent entity that would be better off dead, but it's the culture too. If there was not a culture of statism, then there would be no state. There's be no state that could be maintained in said culture. So the culture absolutely. Unfortunately, as you said, most folks are very peaceful in their lives. They avoid conflict because it just makes their lives easier. Yes. But unfortunately, there's the third party who they can outsource that violence to, and yeah, it's unfortunate too. Speaking of second realms and kind of, I'm not sure if you're familiar with the concept of Vani, but kind of radical lifestyles like van nomadism, or off-grid living and such. I mean, that's demonized by a lot of folks in the mainstream culture, the first realm culture. That's kind of my focus is in the Vani podcast, especially, is looking at these alternative lifestyles and what people are doing and how we can implement those into our own lives and how to overcome some obstacles. And I've seen too many times when people wake up and their van will have a brick through the window, or they'll have or they'll call the bludgies on them. So it's definitely, the culture definitely has a pretty major impact on our lack of freedom today.
Yeah, it really does. I mean, that's ultimately the answer, is to change what's in people's heads. And it's this thing about culture. It really is a big deal. And to be honest, those of us, we're talking about people, cypherpunks, crypto-anarchists, agorists, whatever, like-minded people, libertarians, we've kind of failed in some ways, because most of us began as kind of, very analytical types, and we're very good at reading and writing and discussing ideas and thinking them and planning and comparing this to that and this theory against that theory. It would be really a good idea if we did more music and art and things like that, because that speaks to a lot of people too. It speaks to us as well. And we, I think, had too much focus on the economic aspects and the legal aspects and the history of the philosophy of law and all of those sorts of things. And I think it would be a really good idea if we got more into singing and painting and sculpting and films and so on. I think that would probably be a good idea to kind of round out for movement, I guess, for lack of a better word. But I think it's kind of important. I think we haven't done enough of that, and I'd like to see more of that come on in the next few years.
Oh, yeah, I definitely agree. And that provides a perfect segue into the next thing I want to talk about, the Free Souls. Now, they were an interesting bunch. They really were. I guess to provide some context to the listeners, I guess a really easy way of putting it is they're free-spirited, college-age adults. Some of them are entrepreneurs. Many of them helped work on the development of the free digital economy. Some helped with the George Dimitrios' Breakers science project, which I'll have you talk about here briefly. And it was just an overall really, really awesome culture. I mean, whenever I read the Second Realm book, I guess looking back on the Second Realm book, the Free Souls kind of embodied what I imagine the Second Realm culture would be like. There was also, Impressor John. I think that was the pen name that Philip went by. But, he would publish his anarchistic philosophical articles, and these young adults would just jump on it and have these extremely deep discussions, to help better understand the world, figure out, go through the trivia method, I suppose. And you mentioned music. Their jam sessions. I think towards the end of the book, they actually started up, big theaters where, 100 people, playing instruments, and I guess it was just a really beautiful thing. It's definitely how I envision the culture of the Second Realm. So I guess first off, before we got a little bit of a tangent here, but I mentioned it. What was the Breakers science project that George Dimitrios is working on?
Well, that's actually a real thing that I hope I would like somebody to put a lot of time and effort in. What it is there are these chemicals called neuropeptides. And when you have strong emotions, fear, whatever, fear being the big one, but any strong emotion, these chemicals are released in your body and go through your body. So in effect, they're transferring the fear. It's not just in your mind, it goes all through your body. And they're little chains of protein-like molecules. And the thing is, all of our cells in our body, human bodies, the cells are immensely complex, and they have little spots where they attach to our cells, receptors, and these things go there, and the fear actually affects your individual cells in your body through these neuropeptides. Well, in the book, George Dimitrios comes up with a way of breaking these things when they get stuck in receptors, and thereby eliminating a whole host of psychological problems. This is real research. A lot of this has been done. One of the leading figures in it was a lady named Candace Pert, who was on the team that identified the opium receptor. And this is real stuff. The breakers, the ability to break these chemicals so that they fall out of their receptors, and they're essentially cleansing the history of bad emotions from us. That has not been done yet, so far as I know. There is every reason to think that it's possible, and I, of course, think it would be a really good idea for somebody to do.
Oh gosh, yeah, yeah. I guess another thing I really didn't think about too much. And again, sorry, guys, it's a little bit of a tangent, but I brought it up, and it was something the free souls worked on. But for the first couple of years of being an anarchist, I mean, I was definitely I spent a year studying the philosophy and the economics, and I thought just the emotion aspect, the kind of the individual things like psychotherapy and spirituality. I kind of shunned those things. But upon further thought, if people are going to be building second realms, it would be a very wise idea for them, me included, to I guess get rid of whether it be the collectivist spooks, the controlled schizophrenia, the damage that this, I mean, along with the culture of the first realm, it's a very degrading culture. Right. It really is. So to kind of I guess get those things out before starting second realms and such. So yeah, I think that's what you're talking about, the breakers idea would definitely be a terrific thing. So I guess back to the free souls here. Now I know the answer to this question from your guest appearance on Jake DeSilva's podcast, but I thought it was a really interesting story, and it just definitely leads me to further believe that you had a very interesting life. So does that group resemble any part of your personal experience?
Yeah, it does. It resembles several different parts. Which story did I tell Jake? I don't remember which one it was.
Oh man, it was I don't remember word for word, but you had a group of people that you hung out with that it was like that, essentially what I gathered out of it.
Oh yeah, back in the 70s, I had groups of people that I hung out with that were very much like that, and it was a gas. I mean, it was just wonderful. People would come over. Hey, we're coming over. We're going to bring the guitars. Okay, well, why don't you tell so and so to come over, bring their guitars too? Okay, yeah, well, I'll get my wife to make up a tray of something. Okay, we'll send Bobby out to the store to get a bunch of stuff to drink, and let's go. And we would just do that all the time, and it was a gas. And it's really a very special type of thing. Really kind of moving and memorable experiences. And it's something I think people should do more. And I know it's hard sometimes. We're all busy. We all have things going on, especially if you have families. But it can be done. I mean, we did it, and we weren't a race of supermen. We were just guys, and we did it. And it's a wonderful way to do things. And I really recommend that people try to do it as much as they can.
Oh yeah, I definitely agree. I moved an hour south for this industrial electrician's job, and I had to get rid of my drum set because I couldn't bring it where I'm living now. Mm-hmm. But I'll tell you what, whenever I'd have friends over and we'd sit there and jam for hours, there was nothing better than that. Nothing better than that. So I definitely get where you're coming from too. And to speak to the culture of go ahead.
No matter how good the recording and how good the stereo system, when you're sitting in a room making music with your friends, it's on a completely different order. It's just much better.
Oh yeah, I definitely agree. But that culture of the free souls, in that second realm book they talked about it, and if you consider people in second realms where their autonomy is respected, where it's unhampered creativity, unhampered innovation. I can't even imagine. I mean, I sound old when I say this. I've said it in other podcasts before, but mainstream music, just the mainstream culture, kind of the artistic side, just sucks. It really does.
It really does. We got lucky in the 70s, in the late 60s, early 70s. Things kind of broke apart, and no one was sure how things were going to go, and a new model was coming along, and everything was in a state of flux. And in that kind of condition, people get to do things that they wouldn't normally ever get to do. Take a band like the Moody Blues. Their first album that anybody paid attention to began by some record company just trying to say, well, gee, we don't know what to do. We got this new stereo thing. We got this group. They got an interesting sound with this organ thing they've got now. Maybe we can get to do a Dvorak symphony. Okay. And one by one, it piece by piece, it just turned into something else. But you'd never be able to get away with that today. And that album was a wonderful album, and it made the Moody Blues. I thought they were a terrific band. A lot of people did, and it just put them on the map. And you couldn't do that today. I heard somebody say the other day that there was some new pop song for some famous artist that had 5 writers and 8 producers. Okay, that's not art. That's
Right.
corporate product. And there's a big difference. I would rather hear the mistakes in the music. I mean, no musician wants to make mistakes, but it does occasionally happen. I would rather hear that and have it be real and people really caring about what they're singing and playing than have it, absolutely perfect and corrected 15 different ways. It's just there's no soul in it. It's just, a noise box.
Yeah, I definitely agree. And thankfully, I found metal. I'm a metalhead. Found that 3 or 4 years back, and that's very much counterculture in the sense that everyone hates it except for metalheads, and we're a very, very small minority.
Right.
But it's very, very difficult music. It's very fast music, and the lyrics too. I mean, these people sit down and write their own lyrics. Oh my gosh, who would have thought that people would do that? And there's a lot of I guess there's a lot of bands I listen to. Most of the bands I listen to, it's very much. Freedom oriented. So you can still kind of find it's called politicore is the subgenre of metal. So in a second realm, I can't even imagine what the culture would be like. It's really hard to imagine.
Yeah. It would be very. I would really like to see what it was.
What I really found interesting about Lodging of Wayfaring Men was when Philip started writing articles. And you kind of saw some of that during the main course of the book, and then at the end, there were various articles and essays by was it James? James or Philip, one of the two, and then there was one by James's woman. I don't remember what her name is off the top of my head, but
Frances. Yeah.
Frances Marsden. Yeah, that's what it was. But these articles, I mean. Just great stuff. So I guess the question that I have is, a lot of fictional authors draw from their own personal experiences. They draw from people that they know that they want to work into the book. Maybe it's conscious, subconscious. But do you see yourself in this book at all? I know that's a personal question. But I'm just curious, and you don't have to answer if you don't want to.
No, it's okay. Yeah, I think I do. Yeah, I kind of see myself. To some large extent, in all of the primary characters, I suppose, at least the primary male characters that I write, I definitely see part of myself in Philip. His life arc and mine are very similar. A little bit, I see myself in Farber. In other books that I've written, a new one that I've written, I see myself in the main character a fair amount. I don't want to make them me. But I want to write their interior life, and necessarily that pretty much comes out of me one way or another. So there's definitely similarities, although I don't want to make them me.
Right. And what's is your new book out already?
Yeah, it's called The Breaking Dawn.
Oh my gosh, I didn't know that. I'm sorry, I didn't know that was out. So okay. I guess just a quick digression. What's that about, and where can I get it?
Oh my. Well, first of all, the easy part, you can get it on Amazon, paper or Kindle. What's it about? Wow, it's like Wayfaring Men, but longer and larger in scope, and not. Focused only on computer sort of things. It begins in the very near future where the society is essentially driven in two, and one group of people are more or less left to their own, harassed and everything, but still left to their own, and the other becomes more and more of the world of the New Age of Intelligence. Have you had a chance to read that one yet?
Yes, I have. Yeah. Yes, at
Okay.
Ben Stone's recommendation, yeah.
That's one stream of it, and the other is a stream that you and I would like very much, but it's very it's less high tech and more. I mean, there are blockchains in it and things like that, but it's broader. It's everybody, and it shows how these two different strains develop each in their own way, how they separate, and the conflict that they have at the end. And then it really gets interesting because it goes 100, 200 years in the future. And the changeover event I won't explain, but it's a surprise, and it was a hell of a surprise to me. I didn't have it planned when I started writing the book, and when I realized what was going to happen, I was, oh my God, is that that's it? That's what's going to happen. That's going to be the moment. I didn't know what I was going to write, but I do now. Oh my! So
wow.
Yeah, so I mean, I think it's awesome. But then again, I wrote it, so you'd hope I would love it.
Right. Well, if it's if it's written if it's as high quality as The Logic and Wayfaring Men, I know it's a fantastic book. So I guess to kind of close out this portion, I've got a couple other, I guess, conclusionary questions, but the listeners should clearly see that how important this book is for anarchists, both philosophically. We've talked about the philosophy and kind of the culture aspect of it, but also direct action oriented too. It's a very, very important book, and what I'll do is I will post the free link to the Anarplex one, and then I will also put the Amazon one in there. If you want to support Paul, I really, really recommend you do, and I think after reading it, you'll definitely be happy with the support. So I guess just a couple of conclusionary questions here. What are your thoughts on Bitcoin and other digital currencies? Are you pleased with the development of the crypto-anarchist realm in the past 10 years or so?
Oh my, yes. I love Bitcoin. I love the cryptos. There's little complaints here or there. They should have done this. They should have done that. The block size, blah, 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 whatever. It's here. It's real. People are using it. It's wonderful. I'm as thrilled as I can be with cryptocurrencies. There's problems, but there's always problems in life. So I'm thrilled with that. I think it has a tremendous future. I think it's made it through the hardest parts. Even this current this current situation where all of a sudden the price tanked. Or the exchange rate, to be proper about it. Honestly, I think it was necessary because it cleared out all of the crazy scam artists and we're going to get you rich next week. Give me $5,000. You're going to be rich, rich, rich. You're going to buy a Lamborghini next year. Those kinds of things. They've been cleared out now, or at least pretty well cleared out. And I think that as painful as it was, I think it was pretty much necessary. And now we can go back to work. So I'm really, really, I want to see them do very well. I have my complaints about things, and I like this currency better than that currency and those sorts of things, just like everybody else. But the fact that these things exist, that they're getting around, that there are, I don't know what the real number is, I'm going to guess 100,000 people who get up every day and want to build something awesome in a decentralized economy. My God, what a development that is. 10, 15 years ago, I wouldn't dare dream of such a thing, and here it is. Mm-hmm. So I'm just thrilled with it.
Oh yeah, and even the folks who weren't really anarchist or libertarian or even libertarian leaning before, they learn about this decentralized technology, and now they're now some folks may be in favor of decentralization, which is contrary to probably what their positions were before. So I mean, it's great for a whole slew of reasons. Right. Now I guess the other question: how crucial do you see? I mean, it's not just currencies that's being developed, on the backs of Bitcoin and these other ones. I mean, there's blockchain technology here too that can do a lot of really incredible things. I've said many times before that blockchain technology will be the infrastructure for the second realm. I'm still obviously believe in that. So I guess the question for you is, how crucial do you see blockchain technology being in the pursuance of personal freedom?
Oh, I think it's a really important tool. The interesting thing about blockchains, and again, who knows what all the applications are going to be. We're still in the early days of this stuff. It's still a new idea, where even the people who are its advocates are still wrapping their minds around what this thing is. And what it is blockchain is a tool for scaling trust and in a decentralized way. So you don't need some boss man sitting in the big office in the big building deciding who can be trusted by whom. The system creates that and can scale it indefinitely without a central controller. I'm not even sure all the places that could be applied. And one of the other things that it does, and I was just working on this idea recently, is there's a thing called Dunbar's number. And it just means that humans have a difficult time cooperating really well more than about 150 people. Well, blockchain scales trust to any number of people, so it's a way around Dunbar's number. It's not perfectly around it. It has certain limitations. It doesn't do everything, but it's a big piece. So I'm really not sure how far it can go. I bet you in the next 5-10 years there are going to be applications of blockchain that none of us imagined.
Yeah, it's a really great time to be an anarchist. Actually, it really is. I mean, I've been very harsh, on the political crusaders, and that's and when I tell people a lot of this stuff, or at least some folks, it can be kind of depressing. Like, there's no hope in politics. I mean, you have to find freedom for yourself. But when you look at all of the possibilities, I mean, here on Liberty Under Attack, we have the Freedom Umbrella of Direct Action, which is an economic free or a value-free directory of the economic means solutions. There are about 100 of them. We came out with that late 2015 and 2016. We did the Direct Action series where we examined, individual aspects of the Freedom Umbrella of Direct Action. And then also the other podcast I do, the Volume Podcast, is all about lifestyle changes to make yourself more invulnerable to coercion. And I say all that to say that the outlook for personal freedom has never looked better, and technology, crypto-anarchism, is the major driver in my opinion. It's decentralizing thing. It's you mentioned the decentralized trust aspect. Is doing so much that 15 years ago, no one really could have really imagined where this was going to go, and we can't really imagine where it's going to go in the next 10 years too. It's a very, very new technology.
Oh yeah, you're entirely correct, and the future is looking very, very bright. Yeah, there's some big problems, of course there are, but the systems that are making trouble and have immense power right now are really far more fragile than we think they are. And a few changes, a little bit here, a little bit there, and they're not the monsters that we think they are anymore. If they come down on you now, they can kill you, literally. But the ideas in millions of human minds are changing, and it takes time for that to change everything else, but it does invariably. So, boy, if you ever wanted a good time to start talking to friends and neighbors, this is it. Make sure you speak with kindness, you speak with love, you do it so you can help them, not convert them. But boy, this is a great time to start talking to people because things are starting to move.
Right. And I actually did see as one of the groups I'm in, there was this graph of the adoption of technology. And obviously you had the car, you had just these different technologies, you had the internet, and the adoption rates, like if you compare the when these things were entered every single household, cryptocurrencies or digital currencies are still super low. Like if going on the vertical axis, the top's 100%. Most of those are like 95%, and cryptocurrencies are down maybe at like 5 to 10%. So we ain't seen nothing yet.
Yeah, no, we're in a really good position right now. Things have started to change, and gosh, this is the time to really be serious about it, and to, I hate to say things this way because people will take them the wrong way, but I'll just say it anyway. We got a shot to bless the world, and I mean that in a very real way. I don't mean that to be trite. I say people, if you want to help the world get better, love other people. And I really, truly mean that. Now, people sometimes think I'm being trite or repeating slogans or something. But God, if we do that, we have the information now that we know what we're talking about. We understand how humans can live more healthy and rewarding lives. We need to start telling people we got the answer in our hands.
Yeah, I definitely agree. So yeah, in short, I mean, it's a great time to be alive despite all of the terrible things the state is doing and will continue to do.
Right.
But anyways, I guess we're coming up on an hour now. So I guess any closing thoughts for the listeners?
Oh gosh. Well, the things I always say: live your life. Don't be intimidated by anybody else. Learn to trust yourself. Learn to develop yourself. Live your own life. Again, love people. I mean, seriously, work on really loving other people. It's harder than you think. It's a lot easier to argue about, intellectual matters. It's a lot harder to actually love other people. But if you want to change the world, that's what's actually going to do it.
Indeed. And why don't you go ahead and plug whatever you want to, Crypto Hippie or anything else that you'd like to send listeners?
My newsletter, it's freemansperspective.com, just the way it sounds. And we have free articles and a monthly newsletter, which is, I think it's awesome. But it's, we have monthly articles on history, philosophy, everything.
Right. And from listening to one of your other interviews, and I think this was actually, as I did hear on Jake DeSilis' podcast, so you were writing a new book, but it wasn't done yet. I guess I kind of forgot about it. But yeah, I mean, it seems like you've got a wealth of knowledge on history as well, so might have to get you back on and talk about that specifically. But yeah, I'm extremely looking forward to having you on again to talk about spirituality in the Bible, because your take is very, very interesting. And then also kind of the just modern marriage. I've had my own kind of concerns with it, and I mean, it'll definitely be a great discussion there. So, Paul, thank you so much for coming on Liberty Under Attack, and we'll definitely get you back on here again.
My pleasure. Thank you.
If you enjoyed today's show, please consider financially supporting us. Just visit the website, libertyunderattack.com, and you'll find buttons to donate via PayPal, Bitcoin, altcoins, and Patreon right there on the sidebar. You can also support the show by buying us something off our Amazon wish list. Make sure to also connect with us on social media, facebook.com/LUA Truth, at LUA Radio on Twitter, and at Liberty Under Attack for YouTube. And as long as you're not a government agent, feel free to add me on my personal account too, facebook.com/Shane.Radliff. Got a topic you want us to discuss? A guest you'd like us to have on? Let us know. Email Shane@libertyunderattack.com or drop us a message on the Facebook page. Political crusading has never and will never set the slave free. It's time for direct action. We'll talk to you soon.